Last time, we talked about radio GA, that static of a world where there are so many voices, so much noise, that we start confusing volume with truth. But now we get to the part of the story that most people completely miss. You see, Samuel wasn't the only one who got it wrong. When God called out to Samuel in the middle of the night, the boy did what any of us would do. Theron, to the most familiar voice he knew, the trusted authority. The person who had always spoken into his life, his mentor, Eli. And he says, "Here I am. You called me." But it wasn't Eli. Samuel hears God's voice perfectly clearly and he completely mislabels the signal. Not because he's a bad kid or disobedient, but because what's familiar feels like what's true. But here's the really uncomfortable twist in the story. Eli gets it wrong too. If Eli, the high priest, could still recognize God's voice with any clarity, this story would have ended right there on the first call. Samuel would have been corrected immediately. Instead, Eli just says, "I didn't call you. Go back to bed." And he does this twice. That isn't discernment. That's denial. Sir, this isn't just a story about a child misunderstanding God. This is about an authority figure mislabeling God's voice as silence. A priest, living in a time where the Bible says the word of the Lord was rare, and he doesn't even recognize it when it finally breaks through. So now we have this double failure. The novice, Samuel, mislabels God as human authority. And the authority, Eli, mislabels God as nothing at all. This is exactly what happens when familiarity dulls our perception, not just in us as individuals, but in entire institutions. The clinical psychologist Delia Maccabee calls part of this the feeling of knowing. It's basically the brain taking a shortcut to. When something feels familiar, has an emotional connection, and we can recall it quickly, our brain generates confidence, but without any actual verification. Our brain confuses the feeling of this, seems familiar with the conclusion this must be true. Emotion makes us more certain. Repetition makes that certainty harder. And authority reinforces it. And just truth when it's staring them in the face. God was speaking the whole time. The static wasn't in the signal, was in the listeners. Which brings us to the real question. If both the student and the teacher can mishear God, how do you ever tell the difference between a real signal and just confident noise? Thankfully, the story doesn't leave us hanging. Because the very next moment introduces something our modern culture desperately lacks. A test. And that's exactly where we're going next time. If the feeling of knowing can lie to us, then true discernment can't be based on confidence. It has to be tested. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.